And then you took how the ECP or something, that's how they rate. He said, I'd have taken it over again if I'd known that. I think he got a 32, I don't know if he gets 35, I don't know.
Ready to rock and roll?
So just pull that.
Okay. Sure, we got a minute, yeah, we're good.
Morning.
There we are.
Better late than never. Thank you. On your pen.
You most certainly can, sir. Thank
Thank you.
you. Okay, I have 9 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Confirmation we're legally posted.
That's right.
Okay, approval of the minutes from May 4th.
So
Do I have a
moved.
motion?
So moved.
Any further discussion, changes? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, no opposition, motion carries. Public comment on agenda items. Do we have anybody on Zoom from the public? Morning, Julie.
Morning, everyone.
I don't see any, so I believe we can move on to agency reports. That would be NRCS.
Yep, I think Olivia, were you gonna talk today doing that or no? You're just here to listen.
Just here to listen, yeah.
Morning,
Okay.
everybody. I don't have a whole lot, here. I just wanted to let everybody know, I guess, as far as our programs go, conservation stewardship, has, applications have been ranked. I think Mary had maybe, 10 or so applications that she ranked for the conservation stewardship program. It's kind of a reward farmers for doing conservation on their land. They get a 5-year contract and get a payment every year for the 5 years, to reward them for doing no-till conservation crop rotations, cover crops if they're already doing it, and then they sign up for new activities. They have a whole list to select from. So we're just looking at the pre-approvals just a few minutes ago, and it looks like Mary got probably Mary Schomburger, who she handles most of the day-to-day stuff here in the office. She saw that we've probably got 3 approved so far. There might be more approved later on. So I don't have a dollar amount or anything like that, or can't really share names, but that's good news. So we'll be working on those contracts. For equip, we're working on applications. We got about probably 12 or so applications under environmental quality incentive program. That's our main cost share program. 3 of those are grazing projects, so rotational grazing systems. So that's a really popular practice here in recent signups. And the first step for people that are interested in rotational grazing and fencing, and water systems, and even a well if there's no source of water on a site. Permanent water for like overwintering, seasonal pipelines for getting like water out to the paddocks and pastures to divide it up. But have a source of water for the cattle all the time on the land, out in the pasture. The first step in that process required for us to move forward with any cost sharing on those specific things is a grazing plan. So I just brought an example of a grazing plan. These are written by actual Golden Sands Resource Conservation and Development, kind of another, what do you call it, area of similar to where the funding for Olivia's position comes from, but it's covering a different focus. Their office is focused out of Stevens Point, where Olivia's, you're more northeast.
Yeah, I agree.
Wisconsin. This is more central, and Winnebago just kind of gets pulled into it, but they have grazing specialists and they write grazing plans for these people that are interested in practices under our program. This is just an example. It's not a huge document, but it includes maps and practices and how to manage the pastures and all of that. So that's done for free, basically, by the Golden Sands RCMD's grazing specialist. So that's a big focus for us. It's a really strongly encouraged because it's so environmentally friendly, great for the environment, address the soil erosion, soil quality, and all those things that we're focused on. So other than that, that's really all I wanted to provide is just an update on all the program signs and wrap that equip stuff up for ranging coming the middle of June, and then we'll know who gets funded probably for this the later part of June and start working on lots of interest in the program.
Thank you for the update. Is there any questions? Thank you. Do you want to speak also or not?
I don't have any.
Okay.
This time. Thank you though.
Okay, we'll move on to announcements.
All right, good morning, everyone. Several announcements for all of you. I just wanted to let you know that the Boyden rate law, one of the requirements of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is we need to go out and monitor settling of that rate law before we can get issued a permit to advance to the next phase. So on the grade wall, there's 3 separate grade walls. They're all about 1,200 feet long roughly. There's metal plates on the grade walls that were put in after construction. So I went out last week, I actually got out of the office, which was nice. I went out with one of my staff and we got elevations on the grade walls to determine how much it's settling. And from the elevations we took last year compared to now, it hasn't settled anymore. So we're hoping it's hit a point where it's going to stop settling, and then the Corps will be pleased to move forward with the next.
How much did it settle initially?
The one end at the end of the break wall settled almost a foot. The rest of it was only 3/10 to 6/10 roughly, but the end, for some reason, settled a little bit. It was built a little differently on the end, right? Pulled off site, so I wasn't totally pleased with the construction at the end of it, but Delson Limited went ahead, approved it. It was a little bit lower than it should have been initially, so that could be part of it. The road lot was spread out wider. It should have been brought up a little higher. So I think we can just pull that existing stone and get the correct elevation. It's about 100 feet. So I think we'll be okay moving forward, but the Corps is making us go to see. So
You can see it, it's above water line.
yes,
Even
it's designed to
during
be.
storms or whatever.
Yes, so our typical break walls are 2 feet above average summer. The Boyden break wall was built 3 feet because it's such a huge structure. And then that's a little bit of freeboard building for settlement, so it's still functioning perfectly fine as is, but it's just a little bit lower than. So,
Is that the break wall coming out of the Wolf River up there on the north end of the lake?
yes,
Okay.
yep. Yep, so we have about, I think there are either 5 or 7 more break walls that we have to build, and the estimated cost is a little over. So first step is get the green light to move forward, the next step is one,
Yeah,
timeline for it.
and that will eventually wrap all the way around to where the cutoff is.
This close, so you know where the cut is, there's gonna be
Yeah, yeah.
about a 2,000 foot opening from the end of the Blue Bay cut there to the last break wall. We want some good water exchange there. And
Yep.
and that's the idea. It'll be about 500 acres behind that break wall. They did some waterfall surveys this spring, the DNR flew over, and it was, I guess, phenomenal behind the break walls with dog numbers. They were probably mostly. So that's good. Water quality, you can see the plants responding.
Is there thought that wild rice will be able to be,
Don't know. It's always a finicky one. Wild rice, it's doing a little bit of water exchange, but I know it's been talked about to either try and plant it or see if it can get established. I mean, it's all over Blue Bay.
it's becoming much more established
Yeah,
of late, so.
we'll see how that one goes.
Great product.
Yeah, so,
I've got a couple questions about it. Talking about ducks,
mhm.
I've got 11 duck eggs back in my garden. It is enclosed. How are those baby ducks gonna get out?
I want to make a little opening for the lead ones.
Well, then we've got other creatures coming in, so I think we're gonna hand carry them over the fence, but it's kind of exciting. Anyway, ducks can be dumb. That was my statement there. The other thing is, you were talking about Ducks Unlimited and them doing the end of the break wall.
Yep.
Do they get to determine, I'm just wondering how you collaborate.
Okay, it's a good question. So on this project, because it's such a large scale project, we partnered with Ducks Unlimited. They were a partner along with Lake Floyd Sportsman's Club, DNR, our department. And our role within our department is we designed the break wall, but I was not going to take liability of the design. So I wanted Ducks Unlimited to have their professional engineer put their stamp on it. Because this break wall is so far out in the lake, it's a little bit different beast and a little different design. So I didn't want to take that liability. So that was one step where DU, they were involved with all the meetings, the planning, but the engineering side of it was final approval. They don't keep it. Construction oversight was a partnered effort with our department and Ducks Unlimited. So we worked together to go out there and do all construction. And at the end of that project, that's where they pulled off site. Basically, DU paid it. A little bit more than it should have been. They put their stamp on it. It's still functioning, which is that's kind of the relationship with DU, and I anticipate that being the same for the next phase. Like putting our stamp on it.
Do you do that with any number of private organizations like Trout Unlimited? That kind of, I mean, you've got Ducks Unlimited, Trout Unlimited, Guns Unlimited, all kinds of unlimiteds.
The only one I have worked with, as far as organizations like that, have been Ducks Unlimited and the Wisconsin Waterfall Association, those have been the two big ones. And then you have the clubs like Lake Floyd Sportsman's Club, and the more conservation club, the clubs we've worked with in the past. So very close.
And y'all work well, it all.
It's a great partnership. It's not only just, we all have different roles, but then it's leveraging money and just getting input from a group, which can be painful at times, but at the end, it can be the best design. Cool.
Super, thank you.
They contribute financially, generally speaking.
Ducks Unlimited helps secure grants, so we're gonna be leaning on them to find the money for the next phase. There's a lot of different angles with money on this. It's identified in state statute, which could open the doors of funding through DNR, through Department of Administration. But then the design will take a different route. So if DNR gets involved, we're out with the design, they have to design it, and then everything's closed with their engineers. It's not gonna get done as quickly, so I don't know what direction we're gonna go yet, but I know there's been a lot of done. So we'll see where it goes, but it might be done in phases because of the cost. The reason the cost is so high is the Wolf River, that coverage, and so if we can do it on the ice, we can cut that cost. That way.
Hey, I bet you Dollar General will be happy to give you some stuff.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, any other questions on Toy and Rate Law? Otherwise, I have a few other things.
Go ahead.
Just a quick update on the Climate Smart USDA grants. Again, moving very slowly. We're anticipating some approvals by midsummer, but I made the decision to delay implementation for this department until January 24. I don't see any need to rush to try and get somebody on board. We're not going to have time to get contracts on this fall anyway. So that would give us time. I'm going to put it in our 2024 budget for that position, and then I would anticipate getting somebody on board. Just an update on joint finance with the request for conservation, county conservation staffing. As you know, we advanced that resolution to request 18.6 million for county conservation staffing. What happened was it actually was voted 11-4 to approve about 10.9 million in 2024 and 11.2 million in 25. That's actually a decrease from what we had before. So what I heard is it was a mistake, and they're looking to basically correct it and get it back up to existing. So it'll be back up to the 11.3 roughly is what's going to be the request. So it's looking like that's going to advance to rectify the situation and get it where we were. A little surprised, we all were a little surprised. We thought there was going to be a bump up to 13 million. We're covered the first position at 100%, second at 70, third at 50. But something fell apart. They were lobbying, there was bipartisan support is what it sounded like. So not really sure what happened there, but we can just get back to what we had. That's good. I don't want to go backwards. We had this wage increase in the county and then come up with those things. So really important that let's get back to where we were. The other thing with the state budget is we had a request to the Winnebago Waterways program to add 2 full-time DNR positions to be dedicated to the Winnebago system. There was a push and lobbying done to get that done, and that was pulled out of the budget. So I think that was a hard sell to anytime you add new DNR staff, that's a hard sell. That was on the budget.
On the DNR staff, is that just for the wildlife damage type stuff?
No, this would be the lakes. Because these lakes are so large, they barely have any DNR staff dedicated to working on the system. So it's definitely a shortfall in DNR where they have more staff on other lakes throughout the state, but the size of these lakes, they don't get it. We're trying to get some staff dedicated, like as a Winnebago system biologist, work very closely in breakwater projects. Now they're pulling people from fisheries and wildlife, trying to do that, they're already spread in, it's just not working. So that's why we do it.
Was that a request that we should make or have for that whole lake plan that we?
There was not part of the lake plan, but through the Winnebago Waterways program, there was a big push, ton of lobbying done. There was a lot of work done. I think part of it is, my opinion, is the agency, they kind of get a bad rap, and whenever they add staff, I think it's just systems. It would be hard to add staff, that's part of it, and then it's just politics.
Well, if you need resource people for the lake, is there another avenue to maybe not DNR but outside to get them?
Well, it's gonna fall like, I mean, a lot of it, it's like break rolls, for example, I mean, we're running, I don't want to say independently, but I still try to get by it, but I used to work really closely, so we're taking on more of that workload and making decisions for the smaller break walls, the bigger break walls, like I talked about before, you know, smaller ones, we're kind of, so we're taking on some of that workload. And it's, I don't know, some of that. I don't know who else there would be. I mean, the clubs aren't going to take it on. Some of it should be the role of the it's going to buy some bigger decisions, and that's the agency that should be doing it. So I don't really see it.
Are we at waters of the USA yet, or is that?
Oh, I don't know the latest on it. Do you know, John?
No, but we're all hoping that, of course, course.
Well, again, if it is.
I'm not sure. I know they withdrew, they were doing public hearings, and that's the last I heard. There has been no final decision. We have a new one pending now. Well, now, yeah, the DNR is proposing a change to administrative rule that would give them authority to establish surface water pollution regulations. This is quite concerning also. So, anyways, that's being tied up by the legislature, so I don't know where that's gonna go, but we have a committee, the chairman of the committee that it will go to on the legislative side, that's got very strong concerns about this new administrative rule change. So maybe we can get an update on that next month.
Yeah.
I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I just received that a whole few days back. So the DNR is active in some areas. That's gonna be quite a talking point here.
That's all I have.
So, thank you.
Yeah, just, that's something that on the Winnebago Conservation Congress, and we had our convention at the convention center here in Oshkosh just a couple of weeks ago. They brought the new secretary of the DNR in here to speak, and at the very least, he said all of the right things and admitted that the last 5 years of DNR leadership come to be desired, and I'm guessing it can only get better. And like I say, his biggest talking point was his goal was to make sure everybody has safe water to drink, and of course with the PFAS and all the other things. But I just got the impression that things have to get better than what they were, and he seemed to be a very competent person that doesn't side with the Democrats or the Republicans wants to try to move forward. So, like I say, I'm sure he thought about what he was going to say, and he said all the right things. Hopefully, he backs some of them up.
Yeah, they made some changes on the permitting side of things where we had, I think it was 4 different water rights specialists we had to deal with based on the type of project for various panel straight.
Yeah.
That recently changed again. Now they're going back to one person for this county for all of it. So hopefully it starts to simplify. So I don't know how the general public. It's hard for us to follow sometimes.
Oh my God. Yep.
I think we're at, unless there's other questions. Hearing none, we're at committee chair report. I do not have a report, but I need to respond to a request from Supervisor Gordon. Can you hear me, Julie, pretty well?
I can hear you fine, Chuck.
Okay, I read and her question is, based on the rules that are in this book, does she have the right to vote during the committee meetings? And this book says, yes, she does. However, unfortunately, Julie, the rules were changed. And I don't remember when we did it, sometime a few months back, where 11.6 clearly states that you have to be present to vote. So I'm sorry, I have to rule that you unfortunately do not have that privilege at this time. And I will add, that we got a little bit of an issue because we have our published book with all the rules in it. We've changed so many rules that this book is not current or accurate anymore. Actually, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we are.
And if I recall correctly, there was some discussion at the county board level to change that rule to the committees and commissions. Was there not? And I don't think it ever moved forward, but I seem to recall that there was absolutely discussion about whether at the board level, you needed to be in your seat. But there was discussion about at the committee and commission level, board level, that having voting rights if you were zooming in. But I don't think it went anywhere.
Yeah, I recall it vaguely, but I don't think it did go anywhere, no. I think it got shot down somehow.
Needs to get brought up again because.
Oh, I totally agree.
Worked with it for the committees and boards, it just doesn't make sense and it doesn't work. I would hope that somewhere in the near future, we can overturn that piece.
I'm gonna be at the judiciary committee meeting on Monday, and so I will bring that up.
That'd be great, do that if you would.
I get it with the board meetings, but with the committee meetings, we're just making
Or make
it very difficult on ourselves.
Right, we're making it
Not
hard.
gaining anything.
Couldn't agree more. Julie, would you help work towards that? I assume you will.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Okay, we'll see if we can get this reversed here as we go forward somehow or another. That's all I have. Any questions on myself? Other than this issue I brought up about the DNR administrative rule, we'll address that hopefully next month. We'll see where it is, put it on the agenda or whatever. We're into business items. Review the Upper Fox Wolf Demonstration Farm Network Agreement. You should have a copy of that. Chad, I assume you want to summarize what that's all about?
Yep, so I'm not looking for any approval on this agreement. This is not between us and WAPACA and USDA. NRCS as far as the demo farm network, the Upper Fox Wolf Demo Farm Network. So how that works is this would be a 5-year agreement and it funds it for 3 years and then they would amend it, I think, in the 4th year to add additional funding. But what happens is WAPACA County is the one that administers it on behalf of the other counties. So there's, let's see here, I think there's 8 counties. We have Shawano County, Ridge, Fond du Lac, Sheriff counties on board. Now they were not before in the previous agreement. Us, Outagamie, the Green Lake Association, Marquette County. So those counties all work together and then WAPACA County will have a separate agreement with us and WAPACA County to administer this. So what this would be then is this would go through WAPACA to get approved and then some agreements would be awarded by WAPACA County to all those other counties as far as forward. One of the things that will be changing with this is the past agreement that we had money set aside for our county program because we have money set aside for educational efforts. So we took money that went to this effort and then we were billed each year from WAPACA County to go towards the cost for the program. So the one thing that's going to change now is they're not setting it up that way. We're going to track our time or any kind of time that will go towards it. And the other part we're going to have to do is a field day, probably maybe once a year. And we have to cover the expense of the food and the tents for that event. So that will be part of the in-kind. So I'll have to build that in the budget. It's about $750 to run the event. Well, that'll be part of it.
Will that be a rotation with the other county also?
I think it's done 12 times over the 5-year period, so we would get it a couple times, I think.
Okay.
Is what I'm thinking, so. So that'll look a little bit different, but anticipate this expires, the old agreement expires at the end of September. So I will be coming to you at the end of the year to do their agreement with WAPACA. We're not sure yet if it's going to be annual agreements or if we'll do 4 or 5-year agreements. I just want to make you aware of it, that it's advancing. We're going to sign on another agreement. We're going to have another farmer. We have Rick Berkey, Jamie Albright, and then Jim Lickey. Is Jim committed yet? Thinking about it still. We may have a third one. We have a third farmer that will jump on. So, great great program.
Each county has certain demo farms that have agreed to participate, right?
Correct.
Okay, so more counties get more done.
Yes. Yep, and those farms, they get paid the first time they're in the program, the demo farm, they get, I think it's $20 an acre up to 100 acres to try different practices. But they do innovative things, there's field days, so it's really a learning experience and some soil health initiatives. So they work together, we collaborate, and then we meet once a month to talk about things they're going. With that, there's a consultant with Tilford Agronomy that's hired, Matt Gruger, and they would continue. So he's really the project manager behind the scenes, and then he pulled all this together with the efforts. Field days, tours, and all that good stuff. So,
2 farms in Winnebago County and 1 county, correct?
correct.
Are there any questions of Chad with regard to the agreement? Julie, anything? Okay. We will move on then to business item B. Review the contents of the Leadwater Conservation Department's third fund policy plan. So here we go. This is, should I call it step 2 of a 3-step process?
Correct.
This deals with soil health. You have a cover letter of the 3 specific areas within that program: no-till, strip-till, cover crops, or just cover crops, no-till already in practice. In addition to that, before we get into that document, can you give us
Absolutely.
soil tillage intensity rating? First question, is this new or has this been in practice for a while?
So the piece of paper you are holding is basically a shortcut from Snap Plus.
SnapPlus is a computer program.
Yep, it's the
Software package.
nutrient management planning program that is used in the state of Wisconsin. They have tillage practices built into this program. And those are the tillage practices that are used specifically in Snap Plus. I have, and if you pass these around, I have the whole thing. Reserve practices for every imaginable thing that's out there. Just pass it.
So to tie this together, generally speaking, the programs that we are going to sponsor, the
Yeah.
conservation programs, first step, second step, third step, phase 1 through 3, are all tied to this software package. So in other words, you need to achieve these goals to qualify,
No.
not to
No.
qualify to
Hold on.
remain in the program.
No, not that either.
Oh, okay.
So-
I'm ahead of myself.
All that piece of paper does is explain that each and every tillage practice has a specific number that is designated to it for the amount of disturbance of the soil that is done by a practice. If you have a practice in the fall, that's a specific number, and then if you do more tillage in the spring, that those numbers are added together for a total stir factor. All done in the background of the program. But the reason we brought this forward is in the NRCS standard for no-till and practices. Snap Plus is used to determine whether that is, no, it's not, the other way around. So NRCS is using, in their standard, uses that number to determine whether you are basically using, in this case, no-till or not. We're using Snap Plus for the rest of the soil health program, not so much as just looking at the stir factor, but the stir factor is the most confusing, and that's why I include it. We are using Snap Plus at this time. There are new other programs that are available to determine the amount of phosphorus and sediment that is being released into the world instead of, and we want to show what we were saving. So that's where Snap Plus is going to come in, is when we have a field and we make a change from, say, tillage to no-till. That change, we can do a comparative from what we're doing now to what we're changing to, and that will show a savings of sediment and phosphorus. So that's what SNAP Plus is going to be used for.
Might be really good. What do you guys think? You two guys are farm.
I want everybody's opinion.
We were that?
Yeah.
Absolutely, at the center of 590 plan in here.
590, so they have to report.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I see it included moldboard plowing in here.
It's just a project.
So I know there aren't too many, excuse me for interrupting.
oh no, please do.
I know I think I've asked this again last year, but moldboard is pretty much dead
There are at least.
in our county.
There are at least two, but I know of immediately off the top of my head that's still usable.
Jeff Bradley maybe is one of them. This big John Deere 4020.
Yeah. Used
So
to be
there's,
George
it's
Dodge.
still being used. And are we gonna get the moldboard guy to go from the moldboard to no-till? We actually had one of them try it, and he actually, that was the best soybean peel he ever had. But he went right back that phone. So.
Bruce, you used to moldboard, didn't you?
I think everybody did, but that was,
Big 6 bottom plow.
that's just what our, our generations have done. We Everything changes. And
50 years ago, everybody was moldboard.
so all we're trying to do, all I wanted to explain is stir factor, because it is confusing. Those are the numbers that are used inside SNAP Plus to get the amount of tillage that is used and shows you the amount of disturbance that is done with the sewer. I didn't create it, it's been here a long, long time, but I don't always agree with it. But I wanted to make sure that everyone understood what a stir factor was, and that is what the numbers that we're going to use for determining different practices, and that is, these are the numbers that are in SNAP Plus, and that's the only program that was run in Wisconsin at this time that, it's not the other one, this actually came from Russell, which was USLE, so it's been around since before me, I think. I don't remember when USLE came about.
What is mobile?
That's the
Very
old plows
aggressive
that turn
The old plows,
Turn the ground over.
3 bottom, 4, 5 bottom plow, and then turn the soil over.
Plow, 60 to
I
50.
thought we were dealing with moles around.
No,
No.
no. Very good, but no, then,
Thank you.
we want to go to the first slide.
Well, let me say, first of all, I really thank you for bringing this forward, because
Yeah.
I wasn't aware either. Gentlemen, what's a 590? Tell the committee what a 590.
Well, I believe it was tied in the first version that we had, that we had to follow through.
So
we
to
received
report. that
Since
you
we
have to
received
file
government money for practice.
Annually, it's an
Annual
annual report,
report.
So,
and that goes to this department.
Sheberg does it, and if my fellow doesn't have it on hand, they're done. She will ask, so yeah, it's done every year.
So 590 is a nutrient management plan. In the state of Wisconsin, according to Jeff Evans 92, farm and use fertilizer or manure or any organic matter were required by state law to have a nutrient management plan. The caveat is to have them required, you either have to have cost sharing offered to you, or in our case, we have a livestock ordinance, which requires anyone that has any ownership to have a 590. So 590 is the standard, NRCS standard, that's why they call 590, it's NRCS is standard,
Okay,
but it's called a nutrient management. It starts with soil sampling and goes from, it takes everything that you do in your field, everything you add, and everything you remove. And it's gives you a T factor, which is the tolerable amount of soil loss for a field to keep your soils still. All of a sudden,
Productive, not
Productive, thank you.
And the G factor ties into the pollution side of this, correct?
Yes, it does,
Because
because
the
the T is
pollutants are in
erosion.
the soil.
The T is the amount of erosion in a field. All soil has erosion. Even if it's not being tilled, there is erosion when rain, mother nature, weathering, the whole 9 yards. Each soil type has a specific number that is tolerable for that soil type, and that is, has been reviewed and is constantly reviewed by, is it NRCS and USDA or
NRCS.
So,
a T is tons of soil loss per acre per year. Is, some the tons that are allowed, basically, tolerable. The tolerable soil loss is what we call T. So if you're at T or below, you're doing a good thing, your soil loss is tolerable, it's still happening, but it's not excessive. If you get above this T value of tons per acre per year, then you're gonna be losing too much soil, you can't recover, you're eventually gonna lose all your topsoil. 1 ton is the thickness of what, a penny or a dime across an acre. So that's a ton of soil. So
And
some
then,
soils have 5 tons can be lost every year, and that's still tolerable. That's a lot of soil, so you don't want that happening.
and that's established by the EPA or the DNR?
NRCS has it in the soil survey, and related to every soil in the nation, basically, has determined the T value for all the soils.
so that is partially what the nutrient management plan is. So
This demonstrates then the differences in soil loss based on the practice
tillage type.
of tillage. Very good. Thank you for bringing this forward. This is great. You have something you wanted to show us here?
I'm wondering if we jump into, I think it might be beneficial just to start on the first page and walk through it.
But we wanted to start with that to get an understanding of where we started.
Yes.
Yes.
The slides, their whole purpose is just to show you what we're discussing, so you know what no-till is. They're not gonna be real descriptive, it's just pictures, pretty much. I wanted to make sure that everybody understood what no-till is for cover crops. We have radish with wheat, so it just the pictures, it just demonstrate what that is, so that people that don't farm have an understanding of it. It's kind of just a visual. So the very first page is probably the most important, because it's kind of like, this is the main part. And then each page after that is, we kind of broke down, what we think can go forward. This is not a lot of discussion on this. So anybody that has any questions or anything, please ask. This isn't just me telling you how it's gonna be, because it's not how it works. So one of our ideas was we wanted to make sure that we weren't paying double duty in the field. So if someone has something signed up with, say, NRCS or some program for DNR, or even through us with something like one of our grants, we will not pay for or write a contract for a field that already is getting paid at this time. We would like to, if we have one grant that's only 2 years, and a lot of times you don't get a really good idea of what no-till cover crops are in 2 years. So those, it's just an example. So if it's only a 2-year or a 3-year grant, and we'd like to have everybody have a chance to do the 5 years like NRCS has. So those 2 farms, etc., after they're done with their 2 years in the grant, if they would like to continue for a couple more years to really get an idea of what no-till cover crops are, then we might give them a contract on top of that, but it would not start until they've already been done with it. We're not gonna double dip. We want to spread this as far as we can. We don't have, I mean, we have a lot of money here, but it doesn't go very far. And so we want to make sure that we get people that would like to try stuff. Have one emphasis on that, and that is when we go to the add-ons, those are not typical no-till cover crops. So if they do have a contract with NRCS and they wanted to try adding radish to the wheat, that it's a 1-year contract for only 50 acres. So that we actually thought would be a good idea because it's different than what they're already doing. So
That's on top of the NRCS program, right? In addition to.
yes, and it was,
If people are participating,
Right.
it's all voluntary. So
Yeah,
some
it's all
people
voluntary.
may participate with our program, they may not.
the thing is, I know there was one farm out there that probably is working with Mary and Lynn. And they had mentioned trying radish with wheat, because I was talking about it with somebody else that had heard, and they're like, well, is that something we could try and get paid for? I think it's $5 an acre for 1 year. So it's not a lot, that doesn't really pay for all the seed, but it's just a kind of a, give it a try. That's what the add-ons are for, is just to give it a try. So we wanted to make sure that anybody who try those, but we're not gonna pay double pay on cover crops and weeds. We will be having a 3-year contract. And we'd like to have it where, if they're doing tillage now, that they could get paid for just doing no-till. We got some people out there are not ready to jump in to go from cover crops. So we'd like to have that advantage for that ability for them to just try no-till. We're paying for the no-till and cover crops, because that is what soil health is a combination of the two. We want to encourage anyone to try no-till. There are some out there that don't want to try the full no-till, so we will allow strip till because it is in the standard with no-till for NRCS. And then if someone is doing no-till, but they're not trying cover crops yet, then we want to be able to offer them that opportunity to try the cover crops, not pay for them. So those are the 3 main things: is paying for no-till, paying for no-till in cover crops, or paying for just the cover crops, but they have to be doing no-till first. Okay.
Question, however, you do limit the acreage that a farmer can enroll. And the intent of that is to spread the money out farther.
Yeah, if we're looking at 3,000 acres, this would be 30 farmers. If we got the full 100 acres, to give you an idea. Not every farmer's gonna sign up for 100 acres, but.
So you're gonna do 100 acres or 40 acres to try it out, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd love to pay for the whole farm, if we can't afford that, then that's not really the purpose of cost sharing for this program.
So initially, we wanted to get him to commit to 40 or 80 acre field or whatever, try it out. See how it works. However, on the farm side, you gentlemen can jump in. No-till requires specialized equipment, right?
A lot of it is rentable. farm.
Especially a planter.
Yes.
So even to try it out, they either have to rent that equipment or purchase that, right? I assume they would not want to purchase.
No, I didn't assume that.
Is the rental of planters and all that available?
They are, they have to do a little legwork to get them, but they are available.
Okay. So that's really not a deterrent for jumping in. There are options available. But who's covering the cost of that rental equipment?
That's part of the cost share.
Yeah, that's part of
Okay,
the cost.
all right, good.
If a farm is already included in the cover crops or the no-till, and they have more acreage, can they then apply for the unused acreage?
Absolutely. If they are not doing no-till and cover crops on a specific field, but they're trying it on this field, they're married, and no married land here, but I always deal with married. So if they have, say, 50 acres that they have through NRCS, and they want to try a different 50 acres up here, then absolutely. And they can do it at the same time. We just won't pay for the same field at the same time. I don't think that accomplishes anything to double pay someone for something.
I absolutely agree with you, but if you've had success with one,
And I want to try another.
and they want to try another one,
Yeah.
I actually would love to just have a lot more money for this. Because it is growing. And usually it's the first few years that are the deterrent because they are harder. It's not an easy choice and it's not an easy jump. I think we can ask Dan when you started with children.
When you start no tilling, you'll see the change in the first year. But they always said 5 years, but like in our case, we had a no-till full run planter for probably 5, 10 years, and then all of a sudden we took them off because the ground changed to where in the spring a lot of times it's like being in long ground. And we go till now for a little over 30 years. It's other times. Not on everything, it's if we can get them. Some years you can, they were good, other years it was too late to fall.
to rent the equipment though, as I recall, and having been at one thing, you've got a very specific, limited time frame to rent that in, don't you, if you're gonna do the no-till? So the
Yeah, well,
springtime,
you're limited in time, which is.
Yeah. So-
Short window, 10 to 20 days.
yeah, exactly.
It's
So you've got to really make a plan, don't you? You've got to be an organized
Yeah.
person.
But on the other hand, a lot of times when they buy new equipment, it can move that.
With the modern equipment today, with the down pressures and the way things are set up, almost any piece of equipment, modern, if you not be.
Yes, oh, yes.
Also, it's universal.
Huh?
Yeah.
It's more universal.
It's just an issue of pushing the disc down in with pneumatics and things, they can hold the.
Yeah, they know about 400 pounds pressure on it.
Almost all the new equipment or newer, like, you know, 5 years, 10 years.
10 years.
Well, that's, I mean, that gets away from the specialized side.
Yeah, I think that window was open for a lot more people.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of guys on modifying their older equipment. So it's not like they have to walk and buy a brand new piece.
There's places that sell. You can buy vegetables, you can buy things. There's several places that sell this.
Thank you. This is interesting information.
If I might ask, what drawbacks are there that the farmers are looking at that they don't want to switch to this?
Well,
Now, you get up by me, you got the Cundys, you got the Wilbies, you know, these are big farmers, they're all running
some of them are going
conventional.
to sell, that's what they've always done and they're always going to.
Some of them. They will not change.
Right, and we're not gonna change those people. But what we have seen is, I'm not gonna say the family name, but it's definitely a tiller. The grandson basically at WPS about 5 years ago said, this is the way grandpa does it, it's the way I'm learning how to do it, and I'm never gonna do it any different. That young man has now been to 2 years. So maybe he'll still till the rest of his life, but maybe his son won't. Or maybe in 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, we'll find out that, this is really great everywhere, or maybe there's some fields that I refuse to do that on. So my thought is if we can get 1 foot in the door, even if it's small, get into a field, that to me is a plus. I don't expect to see massive change in my lifetime, but I've seen a lot of change in the 10 years of time.
However, one of the alternatives would be the cover crop. If we can, even if they're doing conventional tillage, if we can get cover crops on the majority of the land, it would still benefit
That would
conservation
benefit,
goals.
that would benefit erosion.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it is a plus, but what the spirit funds are for, so just staying with the program right now, is for the soil health. And soil health is the non-disturbance of soil along with the cover. So that's this program that we set up for the soil health, not just for erosion. So that's.
If they wanted to sign up just for cover crops and conventional tillage, they could go yes, back to the one for just cover crops.
Yeah, establishing cover crops, planting cover crops, and all doesn't require no-till. So, yeah, no-till is not, when you think of no-till, you're thinking no tillage at all. Well, this is a picture of no-till. You can do some minimal tillage. You could have up to a stir value of 20 and still be considered no-till. So it's all about, what you do from the time you harvest your crop until the time you plant the next year's crop. If you don't do full width tillage at any time on that field, then and you have a less than 20 over that time, you can meet the no-till requirement. And then, yeah, it's especially the equipment you need planted to that doesn't mean that you have the meeting there. Challenge. Some of the drawbacks for people are, and you can speak to this, I guess your experience is with no tillage. A lot of people do tillage for pest control, for fungus control, for, that kind of stuff. And they feel like they have to do tillage to address those things. So it's a different process, a different thought process that you have to use when you're going from conventional to no-till. And, just addressing the weeds, addressing the pests in a different way. Other than using tillage to address some of those things.
The one area that does get for farmers that we put in the north, it does eliminate them from this program. So dairy, I would say for ourselves, we put on 1,000+ acres of manure every year. Where we do disturb the soil, but we have to put a cover crop on also, because I do see the benefit of it.
So in those situations where you have manure, a lot of people are moving towards the low disturbance.
Well, again, we can talk low disturbance, the practicality of doing.
Yeah, whether it's practical. But it does still,
It's not practical.
It doesn't work.
it does still, there
I
are
understand.
people
but it
that I
doesn't
work with that find it, they make it work, but it does disturb the soil if you're applying with the slow disturbance equipment, but it does still meet the no-till requirements. It can't.
I mean,
use the
I
equipment.
speak for myself, that's not a practical application for us, because when we do that amount of acres in the fall, over the years of all the years we've done it, it doesn't work. Does the practice actually work? Yes, it does. Will it work for, I would say, the majority of farmers? Absolutely.
So it's not applicable to some
The
farms.
quantity, you're saying you can't get as much applied.
You take any application, they're gonna get rid of their manure. Are they gonna wait for the low disturbance time when they can do it? What's the answer?
Well, I have people that are,
Well, again,
They're not,
Everybody-
I would assume
they're
it's not
capable.
gonna work for.
they are capable. They are capable. Two huge cables that I work with use low disturbance equipment. The benefit they see is that well, they're applying manure at different times of the year. They're applying in spring on their photograph.
my point was, there is a whole group that's being excluded from this, and it's okay that we're excluded, but I'm just gonna speak that we are excluded because we put manure on. Do I believe in cover crops? Absolutely. the state recognizes it. I got approval for reduction in my insurance. On the last handful of years, I just received an order for this year by putting the cover crop. So the double dipper is recognized by the state but not the federal for putting cover crops on. I would say, yes, by just the statement I made. So I think you're missing a whole group of people.
We know that. I am well aware. But considering the amount of money we have,
I understand that also.
and we want to spread it. So I am well aware that there are dairy farms out there that are not being allowed to do this. I mean, I'm well aware.
My statement is just so it's recognized
Yes.
that you're missing a whole group of people.
And
That it's not being done. With my practices, I will continue to do it because I see them.
I actually, am-
So at some point, maybe it won't work for this program, but at least someone at some point.
that's what we're
hopefully they
hoping
recognize.
is that gets recognized because it is very important to have those cover crops after the manure. And I know with capos, when they go, and there is no slowing down. They have to get it done. I'm well aware of that. But unfortunately, we don't have the ability in this program to.
My statement is just to state that we're missing a whole group
Yeah,
by that. So
There might be some opportunities in some years during the crop rotation where they could take advantage of it through our program or your program. Maybe not the spirit fund is appropriate, but, you don't necessarily apply manure on every field every year. So there may be opportunities in your crop rotation where it could work, but, it's just something that, people can try if they want to.
that's part of why with the low disturbance manure on our add-on, we left that as a very small portion because we did not want to exclude them in that area, but with majority of, when you put it on the, generally speaking, the majority of more disturbance than the disturbance.
absolutely.
Absolutely. So I'm forward.
Yes.
There are programs that I would love to see come out in the future, and that is one is to really, or cover crops, acres to help with the erosion factor afterwards. We just unfortunately don't have it in this. Appreciate it.
Are we operating under the same standard that energy is? Check the flag.
Or no till or public that, so. Yeah, the wall, there's all this.
Oh, okay, so on page one, I'll get a move on here. I already talked about the wall double dip on a cover property, so unless it's an add-on. We would like we're gonna have an application, and if we don't know how many people we will get to sign up, but we're gonna have a certain amount that we'd like to get signed every year. If we reach a certain point where we run out of funds, et cetera, we want to be able to rank them according to, what land and water considers the most stable. So we want to move to cover crops, obviously, move to no-till. So the cover crop no-till combination, which is the soil health, would be like the first priority. The second priority is obviously the no-till and using the cover crop fields that are no-till. So just want to have, we felt like we had to have just a little bit of where prioritizing in case we get everybody in the phone with the 7 months funds, which that way we could have some way of ranking if we had to.
The other thing to add to that too is we're not looking to sign up 3,000 acres in the first year. We're gonna have maybe 700 acres a year that we sign up, and that'll be over a 3, 4, and 5 year process. So it'll be about 10 years, it's a 3-year program. That way Sheila and Natalie can have time to go check these fields and then go checking spring and fall.
I have a question on maybe you want to cover copy, if we do that, please.
Oh, no, we're still on your page. Yeah, we'll do question. He made the comment here that, basically all paperwork has to be signed and approved before you start anything in the field. If you've already planted your cover crops and weren't even asked to plant them yet, we're not going to pay to have that process. We're not gonna pay for something we're already started. We want to keep it at a maximum of 100 acres per farmer. We didn't want to say, or we're gonna say operator farmer. We don't want to say per farm because I'm sure you want a couple farms. So we want to make it per operator. We want the funds to go as far as they can go. So that's kind of why we try to really limit certain things.
Well, if you want to should tidy that up, let's go to what the number is. Total office, eliminate that farmer, farmers. You know, people who play with the farmer,
The definition of a farmer.
just put the, whatever your number is over there.
Yeah, it basically, we can't share that information, but it's.
I mean,
operator.
if you want to tie it off, if you think this is cheating, just tie it to.
So to document the phosphorus and sediment loss, we are going to require that the fields that we do this program in have a SNAP Plus database run for it. If a farm does not already have a nutrient management plan, but they want to do this program, they will still be required on those specific fields to run SNAP Plus. I can do that for them. I don't want it to become my whole job, but if they only want to do those fields, that's all we are requiring. If we have second farm available, which are the ones I use for nutrient management plans, and they want to sign their whole farm up, then we will try to get the funds for that. But they're not required to sign the whole farm up, or they're not required to do SNAP Plus on all farm, only the fields that they're going to have to share. We didn't think it was, state law requires we have the money for requiring someone to have a SNAP Plus, but with this going along with this grant, it's our way of being able to show our sediment and phosphorus reductions. So that's just those fields are required, that's it.
I'm gonna show my ignorance again. SNAP Plus is nutrient management plan. Okay, so it's not related to the SNAP food program.
No, they're not all to do with each other. Yeah, but it's gonna answer that question many times. No, it's just the SNAP Plus program is what we use. I can't even remember what SNAP stands for.
Oh, it's an acronym that's used in a lot of these computer programs, and stores, SNAP program.
But it's the stir factor that we were talking about in the very beginning. That's the factor that's in this program that tells us how much sediment and phosphorus is.
Thank you.
moving. Thank you. We are requiring that any field that is under crosshair has a up-to-date soil sample, and we're along the 3-year different maximum change. If you haven't been done in 3 years, we will use that one. We're following the recommendations within RCS and in the SNAP program. One thing I will make sure everybody checks is that it's compatible with the crop insurance. You don't want anybody to lose crop insurance because they put in a cover crop or anything. That used to be a big issue 5 years ago, 10 years ago, where cover crops were not being covered by insurance, and they actually, you could lose your insurance benefits with cover crops. That's now changed. Now they're actually giving them credit for using cover crops. A lot of them, not all of them, everybody's doing. And I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to review what herbicides have been used previously. If you use a lot of atrazine, don't go out with it, because they're just going to go with this and that, and that would be, non-advantage for the cover. So we wanted to put those in there to make sure that everybody thought those processes through. Okay. Now we're gonna move to page 2, actually.
On your maximum acres, no till slash cover crop, because that includes strip till, I would say.
Yes, yep. Everywhere in here, we're using no-till strip till, that's the same, because that is the standard that came from NRCS. So the next page is the no-till page, and like I just said, we're using the NRCS standard for no-till strip till, or what no-till strip till is. We're gonna pay $22 an acre on that for max 100 acres. I kind of just reiterated a couple of the things that came out of the code, no-till code. The no-till strip till involves only in-room soil disturbance. And generally, the rule through most of it is, say you have a 30-inch row, 30% disturbance is like about 9 inches, and that is what's considered no-till in the strip till. So somewhere in there is what we're using for that and for the low disturbance manure. So we're trying to keep the same parameters on low disturbance manure as we are with the strip till. And does that make sense to everybody? So we have 30-inch rows, so you can add 9-inch of disturbance in that 30-inch row. And this is why I included the stir factor in the beginning, was to make sure everyone understood that that is part of the code, and each form of tillage has its own stir factor, and we are limiting the stir factor to 20, along with the NRCS code. This is something I didn't realize people still did. You cannot remove your residue. I understand it with wheat, is that we will allow, that is not considered residue, everybody uses straw, so that can be removed. But any corn or soybean stuff has to be left on the roof. And then,
If I might pause there, gentlemen, does that work for you guys? Leaving all the corn stalks and everything on the top? Yeah, so it kind of rots away in a year, pretty much.
It is true.
That's one of the benefits of soil health improving, is that all of that residue decomposes a lot quicker.
Over the years, 1 year, ain't that too often, 1 year, we killed, in the fall, we killed enough of it. In September. And next spring, they were almost there. There was nothing left. The bugs didn't roll up.
Yeah. Well, residue of that thing could be an issue. Can they go in and chop up that residue?
absolutely.
Make little pieces out of it?
Yep, you can use a stock chop or anything you want like that. Yep, absolutely.
Just can't work it in the ground.
Well, the big one was I didn't realize that people would take, I know people do it, but I hadn't seen it around here recently. And one field, the guy takes his corn stalks off, he takes out his grain. And I guess that's not part of the soil health, so we want to make sure that it's not done on this specific. If you want to do that, that's fine, but don't do it on this field this year.
Yeah, right.
We're going to require, obviously, that you're under T, you're at T or below T, that's very easy. The second you put in no-till cover crops, automatically drops those T values down pretty quick. So that's generally not a big problem. We're gonna require like before and after photos. We want fuel cost comparisons just because we're nosy. I just want to know how much fuel do you save in a year? I mean, you have these numbers that we hear from all over the country, but it's like locally, how much can we save? I don't know. So we have a Snap Plus database on those fields, so we know how much sediment and phosphorus we save. Are there any questions on the notes of the full for the cover crops? you know, back me up anytime. If you have a question. So the cover crops. Earlier we said we can do this with the no-till, which is what we prefer, because that's soil health. However, we will go with soil. And we'll do it, if you're doing no-till, we cannot prep cover crops. So there's a few out there that we'd like to do. Discuss the doing the cover crops with tillage, because I know there's some guys out there that would like to try some cover crops, but the tillages, they still want to till. We just felt that we were trying to really shoot for soil health here, so that's the one reason we, it has nothing to do with manure on the thought process, it actually had to do with a field that's erodible, that made us say, well, yes, we want to plant this cover crop, but that's not part of this program, it's a cover for them. So that's, was actually the field we were thinking of, this had nothing to do with manure, when we were taking out the cover crops by this.
Is cover crops gonna be available to till the acreage? Was either phase 1, 2, or 3?
That's, no.
I don't know.
I will immediately tell them to go talk to Mary.
Sheila,
Get their receipts.
what, we did that for dad tax in the second cover process here. What did they pay per acre through that? If you recall, that was with dad cap. Instead of signing up for your dad, we did some acres, just cover them.
$25 a week.
Okay, so there's an option through our second ones through dad cap. Where we could sign up people just for cover crops.
Yeah, we're, how much an acre?
$25.
$25. So that would cover the cost of their seed maybe or something, or,
I would hope it would cover the cost of this.
yeah. I'm concerned we're not covering that. Is NRCS covering that?
Yes, that's,
And how much are you paying?
It depends on the cover crop they're planting. If they're just planting single species, they get about $40 an acre. If they're planting multiple species, like even just two small grains like tail and rye, they can get close to $80 an acre.
Okay. So that's gonna be the primary resource for the farmers in this county, is gonna be NRCS.
I heard we
Our
have,
cover crops is gonna be more specific to this identified program. So,
and our payment is for 5 years,
right.
and there's no maximum. They can enroll all of their acres if they want to.
all right,
The way we plan is flexible, so they could enroll all of their 500 acre farm, but they could say maybe I'm going to plant 50 acres of cover crop every year. But they'd have all of the land available to plant those 50 acres.
that's good to hear. I'm quite an advocate of the crops.
I understand. There's a huge purpose for it. But,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's not like we want to, they're just not, unfortunately, not getting the attention as so much right now because the solar health is the big.
Well, also, now I understand you wouldn't want to compete with NRCS with our program, so we're specializing.
Yeah, but it's only, it's a shorter period. Ours is, and it's for a very limited amount per
Yeah.
year.
It seems like it'd be perfect for somebody that wants to get started.
Yeah.
That makes sense, yeah.
That's kind of what we were doing. We don't want to compete with NRCS, we don't have funds for that. We don't want to go there for that. And so we're trying to complement NRCS with getting somebody the opportunity to try small. And a lot of times, and I don't know this, I don't know if NRCS rules or anything, but it seems like these guys that want to try small piece, they're not always the one with the NRCS. They have to fit into the programs. A lot of times they have.
They aren't gonna rank a lot, they're competing against a lot of other applicants.
That have other things that they can add
So-
to their information. So
One small field just for cover crops alone is maybe gonna get funded, but it's not gonna rank.
those are kind of the fish we're trying to find. Yeah, we're still. We're the cover crops.
I have a question on one line of,
Okay.
What bullet point is it?
1, 2, 3, the rye cover crop must be established by freeze up or by December 15th, February 1st. Rye alone, only after corn for grading.
My reasoning is nothing else is really gonna grow after rain. That was my only thought process. I don't want somebody to put, like mustard out on December 15th. It's a waste of their money. It's not gonna grow, it's not going to do anything. So that was why I said rye after grading. Because even if you put rye out there and it's freezing, every time it thaws, that rye gets a little further along. Rye is crazy.
If you had soybeans, it's okay. It's just a date,
Oh, you think I should put soybean grain
I
also?
don't know, I'm just asking. To me, it reads like you can only do that before,
Oh, I see what you mean.
it says only underline that before.
Okay. I can reword that. Yeah, okay.
That may not be what you're trying to say, but that's what it says.
Are you suggesting it should say or beans?
So I don't know, I just rye alone only after corn. What about cannery crops or sweet corn or corn for grain or honey?
So he's taken, well, he's taken a sentence that to me means one thing and to him it means another, and that's all it is. So, I can reword that where it's, I didn't want anybody to plant something that wasn't gonna grow. Rye will, it's amazing. You get a warm day in the middle of the winter and all of a sudden rye starts popping out of the ground. It's a weird crop. Yeah, it would be my spring.
And we did spread some rye on them, because we had COVID a couple years ago, and the cover crops didn't get planted. So last year we had it's late, it was December,
Yeah,
when Spencer spread 200 acres of rye with fertilizer spread. And I couldn't believe it. It was all green this spring.
yeah, so it has done its job, rye is done. So I will
Well,
reword that so that makes sense.
If you want to offer a amendment to this, a suggestion, we can amend the document. Okay.
It's not yet a document, it's still a draft.
There's no approvals today, this is just.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were approving.
You had requested to review it and then bring the whole document back, and you were gonna approve it all as one document, and we'll take everybody's input. That's
And I
how-
was actually.
No, I have a misunderstanding that we're approving each document as we go forward. Then at the end, you have the option to reconsider anything you've approved previously.
That's what I thought, but then we discussed. it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I might have misunderstood that. So.
We can still acknowledge the changes here and then bring it back on for final approval. We'll make all the changes in the committee. We'll still have the option to make changes in the final approval for the full document.
Okay, well, step 3 then, next month, I want on the agenda, we're approving this document.
So then.
Obviously, that's an oversight in today's review, it should be reviewed and approved, but
Yeah, that's what I initially thought as well.
yeah.
If you want, then you're just looking ahead then for the next portion of this, you want it to be reviewed and approved with that,
Correct.
and then we'll put review and approved.
And then we go through and approve each attachment like we did last month.
And I think the point of it, however we brought that up,
Yes.
was the sake of if half the people are not here next, might have to county replace the people or however, that you didn't have to reinvent the wheel, but you didn't have to go through all the documents. So it's being brought forward as approved, at least that was my thought, that would be approved, but maybe some changes could happen at a later date. So they don't have to go through every meeting again on the same.
Right. We want to keep this moving forward.
That's why I think we had.
That time frame.
I'm sorry, I missed that myself.
That'll keep us on track for doing it that way.
Yes.
Right.
And I kind of glad that we're not approving this today because I was hoping for it.
Well, the agenda says
If you want to
review.
approve it, you're
Oh,
allowed.
I can't approve without the agenda being properly noticed. So the next month, we're gonna have 2 documents.
Yep.
We'll have approval of step 2, my turn, and step 3.
So then we'll make note of any changes today.
Yeah.
Reflected in the document for July.
Right, which is what you're gonna suggest at this time, or do you want time to think that over? Specific to bullet point 3.
I dismiss, I'm sorry. What's it for?
You're suggesting you might want to reword bullet point
I'd
3?
love to reword. bullet
Yeah,
point three.
okay.
It can be misunderstood, I want to.
And you want to do that before next month?
Yep.
Not this time.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Based on Tech Note 7 that you're probably familiar with, I would suggest that anytime somebody's planting cover crops after October 30th, it should be dry,
Yes.
no matter what the crop is.
And I will, that's exactly where I was headed to the verbiage.
Well, just for clarification, are you gonna just bring that back up with the terminology of we're on this, but the point of reviewing or approving for the sake of having it done, then it will be a total vote in whenever we are done, maybe in the fall, and then whichever of these committees.
We'll vote on this component in July and the conservation cover is what it's gonna be called together. We'll vote on that. In August, I will put the whole document together with some of the other pieces, like the procedures, the summary of the program. It'll be one complete document. You guys will review and approve that. We still have one last hour.
Just state it in your minutes. that's all.
You come back and make change. Like last month, you had suggested a change, which was not. Cat, before we finally approve.
And I think the point isn't, for me, isn't always hasn't, it just, this is moving through and taking a period. Let's keep personnel, at least who's ever bringing it forward today, that we can review it, look at it, that we don't fit around the committee next, you don't have to go back and read it.
I want to afford the committee as much flexibility as I can before we approve the final document. That's a little bit outside of parliamentary procedure, but certainly I think that would work best for all of us.
And then keep in mind, in the summary, I'm going to be writing in there that annually I'll be giving you all a report and it could be changed at that time.
Yeah, Chad and I have discussed this. We have a very important document that we're going to be approving at some point. The question becomes future committees, future directors. How much flexibility should they have in amending the document? And I think it would be not in the best interest of the department or perhaps the county to do that frequently. So we're thinking about annually as opposed to more reviewed 6 months or quarterly or that. So that's our thoughts at this point in time. We're back to you on cover crops. Sorry for the interruption.
It's fine. We have to make sure we're all on the same page. Do I make sure the land crop rotation is an annual crop? You don't want alfalfa in rotation for this program. There's a lot of pork grazing and we want to make the same 3 years. So we didn't want any perennial crop in there. Because that would obviously change the results from Stamp Plus, and we want to get a kind of a snapshot of what's going on. I'd like to see 8 live plants per square foot. Generally, when they plant, even when they broadcast rye, you get 20, 30 plants per square foot minimum. So with asking for 8 live plants in the fall, that's not hard to accomplish. On multi-species years, we're hoping to try 2 different species and more like a broadleaf or grass instead of 2 grasses. Just as, so the part of the soil health is big part is diversity. So if we get 2 grasses, we're not really diversifying as much as if we had the grass and the kind of idea that, non-certified seed is acceptable if it's an 85% germ. That way, if they have their own oats from the farm or their own rye or anything like that, they can use their own seed instead of having to go and buy what they already have on hand. Once again, I say to make sure it's compatible with the previous herbicide. You don't want to plant it, it's gonna die before it ever becomes a plant. And once again, not removing residue. And on the cover crop, we're requesting that they have a soil health test done. The first year and then last year, that's kind of a test, there's different kind of tests. We probably recommend that it's, I'd like to see all the same kind of tests, so I think a lot of the labs that are certified through Stat Plus all run similar, well, they actually don't send it to a specific lab, but they all run the same similar tests so that you can compare one to another. You don't want them to send, so say you did a soil health test and you did it through eggs or sister, you don't want to send it to Rock River. We'd like that they run it through the same lab they run it through originally, that we correct. The reason we're not running it on no-till on its own is with the first 3 years in no-till, you don't see that big of a change in like carbon, not carbon, the oxygen and the other tests that are run by soil health. So we're only going to do soil health field, which is no-till. Yes. Also, sometimes. Most of the documented requirements, they're very simple. This generator here would be probably the one that's calling you, asking you about all your costs and what did you plan, row spacing, et cetera, et cetera. Stat Plus, once again, just on those fields. And then we can run over to the add-on practices, which is the next page. Are there any questions about the Where is the time? 3 o'clock almost. We better get moving. So the add-on practices, we had all sorts of ideas and we had to kind of limit what we had. And so these are just, you have to do cover crops and you have to do no-till to add an add-on practice. They're only for 50 acres and they're only for 1 year. And we try to keep basically the amount that we're going to pay is very small. It's not even going to pay for all the seed costs, but it's just kind of a little like a here try kind of thing. They still get all the worry and confusion and everything else, but for this little $5 fee, will help you pay for your seed costs. We wish we had a lot more funds for this, but this is, we don't, so this is what we have. We try to make the two that are the three that are the most controversial, that's not the right word I want. The scarier ones to use, how's that? Would be like the spring interseeding, planting green, and the low disturbance maneuver. Those three can actually affect the profitability of the crop if it's not done correctly. So we wanted to make sure to have a little bit more coverage there. The last thing you want to do is take profit away from the farm. So those three got a little bit more in funding, and then the other two are pretty much just helping pay for the seed costs. So spring interseeding is they would plant the corn. It's done with soybeans too, but I don't think it's got as much practice around here. We do have a couple farms that have been trying this. They plant the corn and they wait till it's around, I think, 5 is how they measure the corn. You want to have the corn started growing and you want to, at least 5 inches tall is what I'm gonna guess. Before you go in and plant, what they call the interseeding, which is planting a second crop in between the rows of the corn. You want your corn established first. So you don't want to plant them both at the same time. You don't want to compete with them. You want to just put something in there. A lot of times they'll use clovers and radishes and grasses. And then after the corn grows, it canopies and the plants underneath kind of stop growing. They just kind of sit there dormant through the most of the year. And then when the corn starts drying down, then the plants that are interseeded, those will start growing and become a cover crop because then they get the sun. So that's how interseeding works as its basic philosophy.
Does the interseeding end up going into where the corn was growing? Thank you.
So that's what interseeding is. And
That requires specialized equipment.
no, that's a corn planter run twice down the road. They did have to do something with the corn planter to get the little seeds out, but I don't know which modification we did.
We do a specialized equipment. Smaller interseeding, big.
That type of interseeding is fall interseeding. We're talking spring interseeding. Fall interseeding is when they come in with a big thing that, you can drop the seed down and broadcast it.
I think they do use some of that equipment that's in the spring.
Yeah,
Very
they
old,
probably
going over corn that might be this tall.
Yep.
With an adapted, kind of like a sprayer, adapted for planting.
Yep.
Are many farmers planting green?
Not a lot, a couple that I know of in the area. There are areas that you see, hear more about it from different states.
That's pretty new, isn't it? Or no?
No,
No,
back when I started,
that was like 40 years ago.
we were planting green.
Really?
Kind of
I just wasn't aware of that.
Well, one reason that they're testing it a lot more now is especially with taller rye is to help with water hemp is a weed that's just gotten out of control and the herbicides are starting to be tolerant to, or it's starting to be tolerant of herbicides. So it has been one of the things that people have been trying to help with water hemp. So that you get a mat of dead material over top of the soil, and that helps reduce the amount of water hemp that come through. It's not gonna take care of all your weeds, but it's supposed to help reduce the number. You still do have to use a herbicide for any other weeds that pop through, but that is one of the biggest things that is being used for now is trying to combat water.
And I think I'll add that. I think Brian's got some natural suppression of weeds.
So both of those are $15 an acre.
Yeah.
Both are proposed.
What I had been hearing about, there's a lot of claims that by adding radish to your wheat, your yields will up by as high as 15 bushel per acre. I'm going to say probably high. The whole concept behind planting the wheat and when you're planting the wheat, put the radish right in the wheat, so they both get planted at the same time. So that's what we have here is the wheat is growing and then the radish goes with it. So it's the radish are, when they grow, it's a tillage radish, it's not the red radishes we have in the garden. It's a tillage radish that go deeper and then they get nice and big. And then when they die, what they've done is they've created holes in the ground and that's what's called the tillage radish. The wheat is holding the soil in place, but the radish is loosening the soil. It also helps gather some of the nutrients, and it's just a change in diversity. So your not just having your corny, so you need to get at least almost properly to have the word diversity.
So there's so many things now that are edible. Is that edible, that radish? No. You're lucky. Oh, I'm not.
It puts some salt on there.
Yeah.
That might taste pretty good.
I'm sure they're probably very similar to a regular radish that we get.
Okay.
Actually, they look like carrots.
They're not hard.
Oh, they look like, okay. It looks like arugula. That's what the plant looks like.
Oh, you know what, probably people used to.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, they're eating the leaves.
Most of the weeds that we have around here, well, there's a few I wouldn't touch, but a lot of the weeds we have at our cornfields, we can actually.
So is this wheat for grain? This is harvested for grain? or is
Yes.
the wheat that comes from? The wheat's harvested.
Yeah, because, so the radish is gonna die in the winter. And then the wheat is gonna be harvested in the summer. Right. So it'll already be gone.
Yeah.
So,
Are you gonna pay for radishes by the round knuckles back after
that's a good question.
first September? We planted some last year, I mean, like first of October, I had them, so I put them in a
So in other
cross
words,
paper.
we should put a date
Well, I
in
just-
here.
I think you're just showing the money or you
Okay.
give it, because they,
Yeah, you gotta have them.
if you're not in what, with September,
September first, I think is our deadline.
you know,
I don't know. I don't know.
it's almost done.
I'm gonna add
Yeah,
that.
whatever.
September first that line.
What's that?
Is it September first that
Well, I
line?
don't know,
Is it
I've used
September
it.
first? Oh,
Yeah, look at the schedule for sure. but
Yeah.
I lost.
When is wheat being planted? Gotta kind of balance that out.
How many days of growth would be needed on a radish for it to be viable? 40, 50?
Well, that's kind of why we have the deadline, yeah. So it has enough, like, at least a couple months before you get a frost.
And even if you don't get along with the tillage, I understand that, but at least we're having a little bit of diversity, so I guess we're trying to, that's why it's $5. Well, we're trying something new and see how it works right here. We have a different environment than a lot of the, University of Illinois is raving about it, but there's south quite a bit. And so, I mean, my dad lives in northern Illinois, from here to there, there's a lot of change in climate, but going further south, and that's where a lot of these things we're hearing about. We gotta make sure we're gonna hear before we really push it. So I want to thank you for the date, that should have been in there, and I never even thought about it. That's why we was glad we discussed this.
It's probably be okay out until the middle of September. I mean, it depends on when they're planting the wheat.
Early beans. The next one is frost seeding right over into winter wheat. I don't think this is gonna be a real hit around here, for several reasons, but, it was something that I read, I've heard different people talk about. Somebody in the, between the lakes demo fields had tried it, so I thought we would add that as a, it's $5. $5 might help pay for the cost of the clover. I'm just gonna look and see if any other clover would work, but I think it's pretty much red clover is the only one that really winter seeds.
I don't know if all wheat growers spray on.
Well, and that's a good question too. So this, they're going to frost seed in the spring with their wheat. So if you're planning on killing your broadleaves, you don't want to do this.
So, yeah,
because-
I think you should. Make something like that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yep. don't want to kill off the radish. And so what they're trying to do, if they spray the weed, they're trying to kill off the non-grass species.
The spring annual.
Yeah, spring annuals and other things, so. So the purpose of this one, again, is diversity, and two is to, help create nitrogen over the year, and then as the weed would be harvested and come off, and you've already gotten cover crop the following you plant. Red clover is one of those that would have to be killed off at fall by most people's standards. So it's not going to overwinter, but at the same time, it's still gonna have, along with the weed roots, it's gonna have clover roots, probably the soil. Most people don't want to have it overgrow over winter because it's gonna be hard to do. It's easy to kill. Earlier in spring or have it in the first grow and it has to be growing to kill when it's not always easy. And some people don't want to soybean fields out of the state. So that I don't think is gonna be a real big seller, but it's something we're talked about around here, so we want to just have a chance to try it with some of the ones. This next one is harvesting or grazing only on high phosphorus fields. So the best example of a high phosphorus field is anybody that has previously had livestock knows that the field closest to the barn is usually the highest phosphorus on the farm. Not as much today so much, but when our parents and grandparents were farming, they didn't have those tractors, they had daily haul. Where are you gonna go in a storm or any other day during the winter? I go to the closest field. So that's exactly what they did. Those fields are generating the highest phosphorus. So a field like that we know has very high phosphorus, it would have to be proven by a soil test, obviously, first. But on those fields, you pay to have you harvest that or temporarily graze that area. And the reason being would be that would help remove some of that phosphorus from that area that was up in the plants, and then we could move it to another part of the farm, and use it as a feed or it's just a concept. Will it be used? We don't know, but we wanted to try some different things as add-ons that might be something that somebody might want to try, but they didn't really have the, everything to do with it. And the last one is for low disturbance manure application. We pretty much followed the no-till strip till with 30% of the row and trying to stay with the stir factor between 10 and 15. Those numbers came from NCS is working on, so we talked to Barry to get some stir factor numbers. So we didn't just make them up. We asked NCS to make them up. They're more qualified than we are for that. So we wanted to have an availability of anybody that would like to try that with the work. It's only 50 acres and it's only for 1 year. We just thought we add that as an add-on, just as a way for somebody that might want to work.
So at the end, we're looking at just under 3,000 acres. With this, we tried our best to estimate the cost because we don't know the add-ons, what it may be. They're right around that $900,000 mark. So close to what we had estimated for parts of the lumber sort of program, or right around that. One thing we had in here as an add-on was equipment modification. We took that out because it would have put us over kind of the budget we were trying to stay with. We had a $3,000 incentive for modification of equipment. Over sort of how modification.
For 3 years.
This whole program, putting 15 years,
Okay, good.
so.
Should run out of money.
Well, yeah, we'll see what the interest is. It might go faster than you think, but the next program, the continuous cover I initially had in there, I think it was around 300,000. I'm anticipating that's going to be more, and then we'll pull one out of the structural decrease, but see how that shakes out. I think that might be popular. Practice on lower people's.
So you get together with staff during the month to establish the documents.
Yeah, so the,
I got the point that this was
yeah,
probably given to you to put together.
Yeah, we're the
Sheila
agents.
and Emily are grounds within the department, crafting, so I really lean on them heavily to develop this, and we sat down, so and now we do it, and then put it together.
Are there any questions, comments?
I just want to make one comment, for what it's worth. Being again on that Conservation Congress, the one thing that they enlightened us with is that Winnebago County has the highest case of deer starvation, and they have the worst fawn retention because the deer go into the spring in the worst shape. I don't know that I agree with that assessment.
I've never heard that.
Their argument is that everything is farm fields, there's no woods, there's no branches, brush to nibble on, and so on and so forth. And once everything's all cut and plowed, there's nothing left. At the very least, cover crops scattered here and there may certainly help that a little bit. I guess if you farmers have plenty of deer once your ryegrass gets up or whatever, so you may not like them. I think you're kind of neat, but yes, it's just a little, there may be a little bit more benefit than just the soil health out of it.
And even though this is for our farmers, that is a big thing that we're doing with the demo farms and the producer-led group that's trying to form is teaching the non-farm community the benefits of this too. So that's always a really good approach to.
The other thing I want to mention, happening, as I mentioned earlier, with the climate smart grants, starting in 24, we have 3,000 acres of funding for cover grass and no-till with it. So that's going to complement this program. We can sign up people who climate smart and maybe do some of the add-ons with that. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we can intermix this funding, but there'll be ample funding between NRCS and our Department for.
Bruce, you good with us? Good.
Thank you.
Dan? Yep. Okay. Thank you for your
Thank
presentation.
you guys for your comments. I was actually looking for your comments. But the things we missed, and that's important.
We're fortunate to have two very experienced appointees to come in here. You are a great asset.
Julie had requested that the PowerPoint get emailed. Would you all want a copy of what was just shown to you and some of the different practices?
Sure.
Okay.
I would.
Yeah. All right. Send it out to all of us. We have it. Research.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What form would you like it in? Would you like the pictures, or would you like the PDF or PowerPoint?
I think we burnt the PowerPoint to PDF. That might be the easiest. That would be- And if this does advance the county board, there's a lot of stuff going on here, and there's a lot of detail. And I don't know how many questions we might get on some of these practices.
Well, I'm sure you'll be there.
I know enough to be dangerous, but. maybe
I
I'll
think,
take those slides.
I think my observation is that the county board and the members of the board have placed a great trust to this committee, and will bring things forward. thoroughly vetted and is in the best interest of conservation. I wouldn't expect a lot of questions, but there will be some, I'm sure.
And I find that the fact that conservation is a part of this brings everybody together.
It seems that way, we get that support from everybody, which is great. We see the value of the lakes, the county, there's the economy, everything we do kind of ties back to.
Now, in relation to what Doug just said, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, is that why all the deer come to Doty Island?
Where the food is.
It's ornamental sharks.
They love to eat all my trees.
Just a reminder, next month we'll be voting on what we just went through, plus the new document coming forward, so. We'll have maybe a little more to make the meeting next month. If there are no further questions on the document we just finished, we will move on to business item C. Review and approve the Winnebago County Quality Improvement Program cost share agreements.
Okay, we have 2 agreements this month for your approval. We have a well abandonment, and then we have a site in the town of Kaimai. It's the worst area I've seen in this county for erosion. We did one project there. There was 6-foot gullies coming off of this hill. We did a really nice project. On one side of the hill, this is kind of on the other side, they're experiencing severe erosion. So we're looking to reestablish a grass waterway that's going to open into wetland restoration, so a wetland spray.
Is that cost, because it's what, 7/10 of an acre in total?
Between the scrape is 3/10 of an acre and the waterway is about 4/10, correct?
Yeah.
Yep, so it's taking the water off the side of the hill, regrading that waterway and having an overlay.
I'm just referring to the expense of a small portion of acreage, so costs are going up pretty high.
Costs are up. Yeah. Yep, and these are estimates, the bids will be coming in soon, but we estimated it, so we'll see. Problem is, we had the site showing last week and we had nobody show up. So hopefully we can get some contractors to bid on it. We'll see.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Next business item is review, and we're on business item D. Review the Land Water Conservation Department project list. That pretty much mimics what we just approved here.
Some of it. So the first one, yes, that's one of the well abandonments we just approved. Dorothy E-Wall, this was a site, Chuck had mentioned it to me. There's a few issues going on there. They have no close waste that's going directly to surface water. So that needs to be addressed. And then they have a large. Yep. Yep, so definitely an issue. So that would be eligible for no cost waste. The barnyard, there is runoff. We have to run the numbers yet. Just a little background, depending on the funding source that we use, if we use our county funds, we have to have a certain level of phosphorus delivered. So it has to be between 20 and 50 pounds of phosphorus in our modeling. They can do some barnyard practices like root gutters, some of the simple things. It's over 50, then they're eligible for concrete, a full barnyard. So we're reviewing that. That's just for our county program. If we use state funds, we don't have to worry about that. But there's definitely issues out there that we should be able to fund it with that.
State funds are available.
State funds, and then there would be other options as well. We could do a 70-20%. There's options. The big question is, can they afford it? And we are not going to do the barnyard unless the no cost waste is addressed. So we want to be able to walk off that site saying they're in compliance with performance standards, and we're good. So
it's in their best interest to wait until this process.
then they could get a 90%. Yeah.
I would, I'm very familiar with this farm, so I can tell you it's not that far from Dagger Creek. Yeah, everything runs to Dagger Creek from the farm.
Yeah,
which goes right into Lakeview.
there was an old system put in probably 20 years ago that we have to do a little bit of retrofitting to get it to properly filter off the barnyard, and then there's another existing barnyard that kind of comes to that same point. So several things going on there, but I was out there with Mel a couple.
Or you
weeks
went
ago.
out? Oh, good,
Yeah.
good.
Got out the office.
Yeah,
Been
right.
smelling like manure, which is.
Stopped over for a coffee. I'm just up the road.
I know the Ewalds have been farming there for years.
Mhm.
So is that milk house problem been there for years?
It's been on our radar for quite a while, so.
They got a culvert under that farm. And it's very large and covered up because it's part of the farm yard. That I didn't even know was there. And that is a direct conduit to a ditch that goes right down to Acre
I'm glad it's being
Tree. So the
addressed.
grass has been growing well. It is for a long time.
Yeah, there's a spot off of one of the lots where you don't want to step in, you know, sinking in manure. The dog jumped in there and was swimming around. We were both there, like jumping on us.
Is that gonna be expensive? I mean,
It's hard to
several
say.
thousand?
It'll be all of that.
Oh, yeah, if you're gonna put concrete in there,
Concrete.
you're talking some bucks there.
Yeah, and the milk house waste will probably be collected and yields. We have to look at that yet. There will be some costs.
Oh, sure.
What's the longevity of the farm?
Well, Dorothy and I talked about that. Obviously, Dorothy had lost her husband years back, and her and her son and the daughters do help out with milking. So she's hopeful her son will be able to continue, at least in the medium term. So, who knows?
Yeah.
We don't know that.
Well, the one reason I asked that question is Tom Davies actually came over here to go to us because we were at almost Capel side, right on that border. And he sort of said, well, what do you want to do? What's your long range goal? I don't know what this person's age is or whatever, but before we spend whatever.
My understanding is the son and one of the daughters would continue this, when we met out there, that was the vibe I was
But at
getting.
least have that conversation.
That's Dorothy's soul. Yeah, certainly Dorothy's soul. And right across the road from the farmstead, they have two daughters that are now married, so.
And then also, going to start opening the farm. I can't remember if they have sheep or goats, but they want to open the farm to the community, and show farming practices, etc. So it's something that for children, which are adults, are doing, and then grandchildren. So I do see a future, yes, absolutely has. But so not only is it going to be for benefit, if they open the farm to the community and have tours, etc. out there, that would be something that we would want to make sure is not happening. Well, that's, what we're showing. That is in the plans, it's already being advertised. And
Yeah, and then last year they had grilled cheese on the farm.
Yeah.
so they're very active.
If you want an EQIP estimate too, if they're financially kind of limited, EQIP pays in a different way and flat rates, once you have the units, if you want me to just calculate that out for you as far as what we did.
That'd be great.
Might be even over 90%. If you want.
The next one is Pansy Wood. White is running that ground here, White. Several issues on that farm. It sounds like there's been some transition as far as being more open to fixing some gully erosion, some of the waterways. So we have multiple waterways. And we're looking to spend up our MPP money. That is a priority watershed where that farm is located. So we have about 22,000 sitting in that fund right there that we can put towards it. And then we can pay back the spirit funds up to that point. So a lot of work out there that needs to be done. And then Melvin Selly was another one. came in and there's some issues out there with some erosion, so we're looking at potential water.
That's gonna right here, we're doing one of these waterways because of the winter.
It's the bad sites. of
Yeah,
that, so that could- water to-
Okay, is there any questions on that project list? Hearing none, the next thing is a motion to adjourn.
So.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi,
Opposed, hearing none, motion carries. Thank you.
thank you.
We've had a very productive meeting here, so I certainly.
Hey, remember-
Very thanks.
Well, I was complaining.